Okay, hi everybody. Welcome. Thank you very much for joining me today on today's webinar, Outreach via LinkedIn, the Advanced Strategies Part 2. I can see lots and lots of familiar faces in there. So look, for the regulars, thank you very much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. And for those of you who this might be your first or second webinar, please stick with me. And if you have any questions or comments, feel free to shoot them through. So today's webinar will take about 50 minutes or so, probably a little bit less going by the rehearsals. And we're going to cover outreach via LinkedIn. I've called this advanced strategies. So it's not that they're particularly hard, they're just more rare. So we don't see a lot of people using these strategies, or I certainly don't, and I've done a lot of research. So I'm sure that you'll be able to put these into place if you take the right steps and you follow me through this webinar today. So why am I giving away some of my absolutely best social strategies for free? So basically, I'm doing this to promote a couple of things. First of all, the Boss podcast, the Best of Social Selling podcast, has been out for a month or so, well, exactly a month. And new episodes are released every week, every Monday, and I've even got the Boss podcast t-shirt on today. And we're basically dividing that into two sections. So we've got the expert series, and what that is where we get somebody in either internationally or locally to talk to us about how they're using social selling and what the results they're achieving, and getting them to break down their strategies so that we can go and replicate those, we can go and use those. And the other one is the masterclass, and this is where we get a couple of us together and we basically pull a section apart. So for example, we'll just talk about outreach. We might pull apart someone's outreach strategy so that, again, we can go away and use those best strategies. Over on the left-hand side, you can see draft number 4.2 of the cover of Tactical Pipeline Growth. Already it looks a little bit different to that. The book is with the publisher, so we are talking about weeks before we'll have an electronic copy of this, and I'm really, really excited. I've been working on this for a long time. I've had a lot of help from a lot of people, and I'm very, very grateful. Tactical Pipeline Growth is exactly what it says on the tin. This book will allow you as a salesperson or as a sales leader to break down your pipeline prospecting strategies, I should say, and just step by step map that out. It's got some really strong cadence platforms, cadence templates inside the book. There's lots and lots of resources. It's a relatively short book at only about 26,500 words, which means you can consume this really quickly. It's a guide. There's not a lot of fluff in there, and you can just break this out into pieces and start putting it into practice straight away. Some of the things we've included inside the book are things like email templates, phone scripts, text scripts, voicemail scripts. We've got a daily activity planner to help you and your team be more effective. There's social media outreach scripts, whether it be how to ask for a meeting, what should you send on a follow-up email, how to connect. We've got individual client persona build-out tools in Excel, as well as lots and lots of other bits of templates that we're going to include as part of the book and part of the additional download. So you'll hear more from me on that, but that's what we're here for today, is do a little bit of a pump up around that. So thank you very much. So I'm calling this the Advanced or the Expert series, simply because these are the strategies that I share with a lot of people, and I've trained these at a very, very high level, including, and actually this is probably not well known, but including a lot of other authors, well-known Australian bloggers, award winners, sales trainers and sales coaches. Most of those people whose books you've read have asked me to come and help sharpen up their outreach strategy. So, the stuff that I'm going to show you today is at the top of the funnel. So this is exactly what other sales trainers are using. They've taken my strategies and employed them in theirs. In some instances, I've been asked to go and train other people's sales teams, take other people's social selling courses, I should say. Of course, we've come across this because John Dugan and I were ranked number 1 and 2 social sellers, ranked number 1 and 2 Australia's best social sellers, and that's where the Best of Social Selling podcast comes from, in 2015, 2016, back to back. And then I've taken those strategies and built on them over the years. I calculate I have watched or read or listened to 4,320 hours of training content in the last 6 years. And I've digested a lot of that to bring that to you today in what I can in just a very short 40-minute presentation. So there's some really good stuff. This is the best of the best. There's not much left out. I buy a lot of social selling courses like all of our competitors. It's not really that we're competitors in this space, but I've devoured as much as I can, even if I've had to spend money to buy it, whether it be from the States, from the UK, or here in Australia. And the strategies that I'm sharing here are just about best of the best. Some housekeeping for us very quickly. Feel free to send through some questions, but before you do, I'm going to answer them all at the end. So last week we had questions coming through and they were saying, hey, Mark, can you expand on that? By the time we got to answer the questions, we couldn't figure out where that question or what that question was pertaining to. So if you want to send through some questions, I'll answer all of them at the end. Just make sure you indicate what it is that you want a little bit more detail on. I'd be more than happy to do that right at the very end. Of course, we're going to record this, so if you need to duck off or if you have registered and you're not here, which is very few people, I've got about 70% of the people who have registered are here, which is absolutely awesome. We'll send out a link to a unlisted link on YouTube for you guys and girls to be able to go and watch this at your own leisure. So I'm also assuming that you've got a medium to high level of LinkedIn ability. I'm not going to show you how to do things. I'm going to tell you what you need to do. And I'm assuming that you can navigate that stuff on LinkedIn your own way and you can find out how to do that. If you're struggling, if I'm talking about something that you're not sure about, the best thing to do would be go to YouTube, and whether it be my account or somebody else's, and search that. It's the second best search tool on the planet. Or even LinkedIn have got a whole bunch of tutorials where they break down how to use certain aspects of Sales Navigator and LinkedIn. I'm not going to go into that in any detail at all today. And for those of you who are unsure, I am not a LinkedIn guru. I'm just a very good salesperson that knows how to use social media as part of my outbound tools. There's some really clever LinkedIn specialists. If you want to follow people that are good on LinkedIn, technically good on LinkedIn. Andy Foote out of Chicago is very, very good. Bryn Tillman, who I think is on the west coast of America, and Melanie Deladoro is also very good. So they're very, very clever individuals and they know everything there is about the platform. They're good people to watch as well. Bruce Rasmussen is another one who's very clever. Okay, so without further ado, let me jump into the bits and pieces today so I can give you an outline. I'm putting the troubleshooting up front because you are going to need to come back to this slide. In order, when you start outreaching and you start to fail, come back here. There is only 3 reasons why the strategies I give you won't work, okay? And to avoid certain failure, you need to have these things absolutely dialed up in advance, okay? So your profile needs to be compelling. We covered this in depth last week, and I'm not going to do that now, but it needs to be as a magnet to your perfect client. So when your prospects see your LinkedIn profile, they need to be thinking, this is somebody I need to have in my network. If you've been unable to generate that, so you haven't done enough work, or maybe you've done too much work and your profile looks like a carnival, it's got that many colors and flashing lights all over it that it's driving people away, you'll need to make those changes. The second thing that will make it incredibly difficult for you to be successful here would be if you have the incorrect or the wrong network. If you have the wrong people in your network and then you post content, you won't get very strong interaction at all. And that's going to be a real pain, a thorn in your side. So if you've got the wrong people or you're posting the wrong topics, you need to be clear about the message, about your message and your audience and how those align, or in fact, how they don't align. Okay, we need to make sure that we don't get sucked into just measuring likes and connections. So if you're posting content about your industry and about the things that you do and you get good interaction, that's fantastic. If you post a picture of you eating your lunch or you out of the meeting and that gets really great interaction, but your business content doesn't, then there's a high probability you're connected to the wrong people and you need to change your content or delete some of your network, or probably both. Lastly, messaging. Okay, so we need to have some really good high quality messaging worked out well in advance. We need to be using things like persuasion and influence in our messaging in the way that we structure our message, and also the structure of the message itself and the way that it presents online. So we'll cover that in a little bit of detail, but you certainly don't want to be taking an email type strategy onto social media. You'll be very unsuccessful. So why should we be worried about outreach if we're using social media? So I'm going to tell you that outreach allows you to take control of your conversation volume, regardless of what platform that is. So whether you're, a phone-based seller, or you're an email-based seller, or you're one of the clever ones and you're using a combination of everything, professional selling is about being able to increase or decrease the level of conversations, the volume of activity that you're able to drive. So if you're going to take an approach of just having an inbound strategy, that's not going to work for you. You've got no control over that. And we see a lot of people that are LinkedIn gurus, or so-called influencers, 35, 40,000, 100,000 connections. And typically what they say is just post something and then in come the leads. Well, 9 times out of 10, those people are selling courses for you to become an influencer. And you don't have the time or the ability to spend all day and night on a particular social strategy, on a social media platform, waiting for people to send you a message. The thing that we need to do as professional sellers, as professional sales reps, is have an outbound strategy so that we can absolutely take control of the amount of prospecting that we need to do. And that's why we need to be using outreach on social. And not many people are doing it, and the people that are doing it absolutely incorrect. So there's some really good interest in this topic and how you can do it correctly. So what I want you to do, there's a couple of overarching concepts today. And the first one that I want to get into your brain is this flip the script. Now, I've stolen this from Oren Klaff, so that's ORENKLAFF. Oren, I know we're connected on LinkedIn. Loved your book. If you haven't read Oren's book, he's got Pitch Anything and Flip the Script. Please feel free to do so. So, Oren, I'm hoping I'm giving you a big enough pump here so you don't sue me for stealing your book title as part of my webinar strategies. Great book. I've got it on both audio, Audible, and in hard copy, and I'd suggest you do absolutely the same. He's a very, very clever man. But we're going to use his concepts today in a slightly different way. Flip the script. The bar for social outreach is so low. When you think about the quality of outreach you're receiving today, and I use quality as describing something that's very low, it's going to be really easy for us to dial up our outreach and stand out and get a really good high-level interaction with our clients and our prospective clients simply by flipping the script. So this is the first part of what I want to walk through today. So we need to just simply compare what we're doing already, what we're seeing as standard activity versus what we're able to do. So think about our current standard of social behavior that we see. So I guess in some respects what we're doing, but also what we're receiving from people. Typically, if Gary Smith is going to connect with me on LinkedIn, there's been no interaction before they send me a connection request. The first thing I see from Gary Smith is a, "Hey Mark, can I add you to my network?" So what about if we flipped the script and made sure that we had several interactions, 1, 2, 3, 5, 7, whatever, interactions with Gary Smith before we asked him for a connection? Do you think he'd be more successful? I'd say absolutely. We'd be significantly more successful if we flipped the script on that. How many connections are you getting without a connection request? Most. What about if we flip the script? We flip it and we send a connection request, a personalized connection request every single time. Great. Now you're going to say, Mark, that's not very interesting. I've heard you say that 1,000 times before. Correct. But most of the connection requests that you receive, the personalized connection requests that you receive, are cheesy, dodgy, templated connection requests, right? And there's, it's, "Hey Mark, looks like we're in the same group. Hey Mark, like the look of your profile, let's connect. Hey Mark, looks like we're connected to the same people, let's connect." So what if we flipped the script, if we flipped it and came up with a really authentic but yet easy way for us to have some good strategies to reach out to people and drive more connections, okay? And it's all about quality versus quantity, okay? But how could you do that? Let me give you some examples. So what do I mean by a non-templated connection request? So sometimes when I send a connection request to people, I will make sure it's got like a bit of a spelling mistake, or maybe I won't connect the spelling mistake. Because when you receive the templated mistakes, you have a think about the way they present. They all present exactly the same. They look the same. You know, they've got, you know, they sign off the same. They've got their phone number in there. They've got their mobile number. They've got their email address. So flip it, right? Let's change it. And so if your name's Nicole, I might say, hey, Nikki, hey, Nick, let's connect. If it's Andrew, I might say, hey, Andy, you know, we've crossed paths here on LinkedIn. Let's connect. Now, I get that some people might think that's taking a step too far or being a little bit cheeky, but it's certainly authentic and it's coming from a real place of authenticity, you know, and just maybe make it look like it's not such a template. What else do we see? We see people asking early and asking big. Just today, I accepted a connection request from a guy in some finance business. And he said, Mark, thanks for connecting. Bang, here's the calendar invite. You know, we help businesses manage their staff who are struggling to pay their staff. And I said, mate, I don't have any staff. You know, if you'd looked at my profile, and then he sent back saying, oh, we use Sales Navigator to figure out who's got the right prerequisites to send the email to. I said, well, that's rubbish, because if you'd have used the right filters, you would have filtered on staff people with more than 10, and that would have filtered me and my business out. So you haven't used that at all. You're just digging a bigger hole for yourself. So people ask early and they ask big, right? You know, Mark, let's take 15 minutes in your calendar. Flip it, right? So how do we do that? What's the opposite to ask? Give. So connect, give something. You know, what have you got to give? Like, give them an infographic. You know, hey, Mark, because you're in sales, chances are you're really interested in, you know, trying to make some of these social media platforms work for you. Here's 7 steps you could use to generate sales conversations on LinkedIn. Lots of other sales directors have been using this and been having great success. Hope you enjoy it too. No ask. Are you going to stand out? You betcha. You're now in the top 1 or 2% of people. And what happens when people do ask, just like my mate today, yesterday it was, who asked for the finance guy? They ask and then poof, disappear. How can we be different? Flip it. If you do ask and you don't get a response, what should we do? Go and like some of their content, interact, tag them in something else straight away. Make it obvious that you're not going to be just one of those spammers, one of those people that are just on LinkedIn trying to drive sales conversations. You're actually trying to drive business conversation and dig in a bit deeper. So what happens when people connect with you 9 times out of 10 or more? So basically there's 3 things that happen, right? They connect and pitch, about 14%, just like my mate did yesterday. They connect and do nothing, and that's about 82% of the time. Or you connect and develop a bit of a relationship, and that's a very small percentage of the time. Bill Beadle, I know you're on this and you're going to ask me, where did I get these stats from? Because you asked me for the last one. These stats are calculated from my own personal experience. There you go. Just to get the disclaimer in there. So the point is, there's very few people are able to connect and build a relationship, or we build a relationship with very few people out of 100. But we do, don't we? There are occasions when we develop a relationship online that lasts and even creates some business value. So if we're already doing it, why can't we reverse engineer that? So very simply, let's systemize or replicate the relationship building behavior that we know works simply by looking at what we've done in the past that creates that behavior. And what you won't be surprised to note is the behavior that works is not the connect and pitch, right? And it's certainly not the connect and do nothing. So if we know that we need to replicate relationship building behavior, it makes it significantly easier for us to take that a little bit further. Now, when I've put this in classes before, people have said, well, hang on, if you're just going to replicate building a relationship, that's not very authentic. So I just want to hit that on the head straight away. How do you start an authentic relationship? By reaching out and starting a conversation. It's exactly the same process. So don't be suckered into that, you know, it's inauthentic to have a deliberate process around trying to start a relationship. Okay, you're only going to start a relationship if you've got things to reach out and talk to people about. So if you want to challenge me on that, happy to have a chat offline, but this is how authentic relationships start, is by having a system and process to replicate that. Okay, where do you need to start? So at the risk of repeating myself, a little bit from the last sessions. We've got to start at the beginning, and you need to understand who your clients, your perfect clients are, right? So individual client profile, and we're going to use mine because it's easy for me to do this. All right. So my ICP are the perfect clients: sales directors, head of sales, group head of sales, general manager sales, national field sales manager, that sort of thing. Right. They're in fintech, typically SaaS, computer hardware, computer software, computer networking, the tech space, business services, that sort of thing. They've got a sales team size somewhere between 20 and 200. Much lower than that, they find it hard to afford me. Much more than that, and they might well have, you know, a couple of sales enablement functionalities inside. Location, really easy for me to write that out. Australia, New Zealand, Singapore. Rarely do I travel much beyond that to do sales training. And their revenue is typically 10 million to just under $1 billion. Actually, you know, that's actually probably 40 million rather than 10 mil. So that gives me a really easy group of people to look for. And guess what? These filters also exist inside LinkedIn, and particularly inside Sales Navigator. So if I go and put these filters inside Sales Navigator, it's going to find me a whole bunch of people I can start to reach out with. I then need to figure out who, out of that group, what sort of thing is going to make it easier for me to start a conversation with those people. These are called triggers. Okay. So for an outbound strategy, I'm looking for new senior sales hire. Maybe sales directors move from business A to business B. I love it when someone's moved from being a BDM to a director of BDM, because that gives me an opportunity to go, hey, I see that you've taken a new spot in a role. Some of the other people just like you that have worked within your space, typically working around this and this, you know, I've got some prospecting skills or content that might help you build that out. Here you go. It gives me a really easy way to engage with those people, and it can be that simple. Okay. If I see sales staff numbers increasing or decreasing, chances are they're going to need a hand with some effectiveness. They're going to need to ramp up the effectiveness with their new team, or they've got smaller amount of team, probably going to need to be even more effective than what they are now. As I said, if someone's promoted, that's a great opportunity for me to interact. Maybe they've bought a business and I need to bring those two sales teams together. Potentially there's something in the media. Again, these are all filters that are inside Sales Navigator that I can place across that first search. So once I've searched the ICP, I can then search for people inside that ICP who have recently been promoted, have recently changed roles, who have been in the news. And that gives, you know, 10 or 15 people that I can reach out to in a really deliberate way, high quality. So I'm not spamming, because I know these people are all got these problems or in a very similar situation to people I've been dealing with, and makes me very confident in my outreach. Okay, so and this is an advanced outreach strategy, of course, and I just want to mention this. If you are posting content, if you're posting good stuff, if I'm writing articles and I've got sales directors that are liking or interacting with my content, that too represents a trigger. So in a lot of cases, they may already be connected with me, but if they're not, this gives me an opportunity to start a conversation about those same things. So it would be, hey, Bob, I see that you like that article around sales activity and how important it was to keep the quality of your activity high. You know, maybe you'd like this piece of content too, or what's happening in that space. You get the idea. So this is, so I'm not saying you don't take action on these. Absolutely, you take action on these very simple things. It's all about the quality rather than the quantity. And I like to treat these interactions, these easy ones, as a missed telephone call. In 2000 and 2000, between 2000 and 2005, I owned an installation business where I employed a bunch of people, and we had 2 people answering the telephone. The phone rang all the time. And they were inbound inquiries, right? Nobody's phone rings like that anymore, but use these as the same trigger. If someone's liking content and they're in your target market, ring them up, send them a message, reach out to them and say, hey, I saw you like that. What's going on? Why do you think you like that? Can I provide you with more material? It's a great opportunity. Treat it as inbound. It's going to make it much easier for you to engage people that way. Okay. Well, so the second part. So remember, we've got flip the script. So I spoke about that. We're going to get to everyone's expectations and flip that around. A lot of you will know Gary Vee and his third book, Jab, 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 Right Hook. So we're going to use this concept aligned with flip the script to create our own outbound cadence. For those of you who don't know, Gary Vee's concept of his third book was jab, jab, jab. You know, you lead with your left, really lightweight punches and then knock them out with your right hook. That was what a boxer did. In the sales space, you reach out with a very soft touch and then you slam them with your right hook, which might be, you know, asking for a meeting, asking for a telephone call, asking for a demo, whatever the price may be. So this strategy works really well. There's an interview with Gary very recently, and he says if he wrote this book today, it would be called Jab, 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 Right Hook. And I think that's really telling. And I want to share that because that's going to help us frame up our mindset about how we need to be reaching out and building our outreach strategies for our prospects. So let's take this into play. We've got our Gary's Jab, Jab, Jab strategy and the flip the script. Let's do the opposite of what people are expecting us to do or what everyone else is doing and take that into our next slide. So, okay, this is a social cadence that I've built for myself and for some of my clients, and this one works really well. However, it may not suit you. You might like it to go longer. So here goes over, this one goes over 30 days. You might wish to go over 60 days. You may wish to go over 90 days. You may wish to go over 30 days. You might wish to contact your client every 3 days, every 2 days, every 9 days. These are all irrelevant right now. The concept I want you to try and get around is implementing a jab, jab, jab on social and then your right hook so that we can flip the script in the interactions that people have had. Okay, so how does that work? How does this build out for salespeople? If you're on this webinar, you want to be able to make this work for you. This is what it looks like. And the first thing that people say, all right, the first thing is how many touches do I need to do before I can right hook? And the answer is going to be, it depends. Now, last week I delivered this and I had a good friend reach out and say, well, Mark, you said you had 92 connections over the last fortnight and 61 of those became conversations. How many of those have become real live sales conversations? And I had to say, well, hang on a second. So if I've connected with 92 people in the last 14 to 1 day, okay, and I've sent 1 or 2 messages across those interactions, where am I up to in my jab, 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 right hook? I'm just jabbing. I haven't slayed on the right hook yet. So if you want to know how many of those sales conversations over the last fortnight or those interactions I've had on social, around a 60, 70% success rate in starting conversations with new connections is about sales, about buying me as a consultant, then you've got the wrong idea. Social is the wrong strategy. That's not the way it's going to play out. So if you think about my services, so I'm typically a few $1,000s at the very least, and most of my long-term clients are, tens of thousands of dollars. That decision's not going to be made on 1 or 2 interactions across 3 or 4, 7 days. So I use that as an example because that's not the mindset you can bring into social. And in fact, I think that's not the mindset you can bring into prospecting these days at all. And this is why a cadence is so very, very powerful, because people forget where they're up to, get lost. And so what they do is they've got their boss breathing down their back. So they just go for the right hook all the time and they forget about the jab. Or on social, it's the opposite. People just go jab, 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 and they forget about the right hook. A cadence like this built into your CRM or into some other tool is going to make it, like such as Sales Navigator, is going to make it significantly easier for you to be able to manage this and know when to lead with your left and when to lead with the right. So what do? Get to the punchline, Mark, for goodness sake. All right, so we want to be building up a frequency of exchange by interacting with people before we make an ask. And because we know that the more that we engage and swap messages and interact with people, the easier it is for them to like us, the more likely they're going to say yes to us. Basic behavioral science, persuasion. Get this stuff under your belt, people. I'm telling you, I cannot tell you enough. You have to get on top of this behavior science because you're dealing with people and people's behavior. You need to figure that out. So day one, interact, go and look at their profile. They get a notification that I've visited their profile, like some of their content and follow them on LinkedIn. They will now be aware of you. They go and look at your profile, they get an advertisement, they see what you're all about. A couple of days later, like some more content, comment on something they've posted or whatever the case may be. We then go another third round of interaction, review their profile, and we send them a connection request with a personalized message. Hey, Gary, I see we've interacted a little bit here on LinkedIn. Looks like we're pretty well aligned. What do you say we connect? Simple, pretty hard to say no to that. couple of days later, you send a post-connection message. And no, it's not, hey, Gary, I see we've been interacting. Maybe we should get some time in the diary to walk through my consulting offers. It's, hey, Gary, thanks for the connection request. Here's a bunch of resources. Here's some tools. Here's an event. Here's, a research paper. And it doesn't even need to be based around your business. It needs to be based around the problems that you solve and the industry that you're in. They're going to go, geez, I was expecting to get pitched by Mark there, and now he's given me some piece of value. There's no ask, right? So you share something with no ask. So not even like, here's an infographic, and if you'd like to book some time in my diary, don't fall for that, okay? We're still jabbing, right? Then we get into, a little bit more jab, so we might tag them in something. Hey, thought you'd be interested, like some content. Then you might ask, look, Gary, I just can't believe how well aligned you are as a salesperson to trying to drive good quality activity through your sales team. I'd love to just jump on the phone and swap notes at some stage in the next month or so. What do you say? Super soft ask. Gary's going to say, sounds like a great idea. Next week you go, look, I've got some time in my diary next week. What do you think? And that's how that works. Okay. We're building relationships. We're not driving, straight for the jugular. Jab, 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 bang. And here's what I like. This is where we flip the script again. When Gary doesn't answer, or he says no, instead of trawling back into our hole, okay, what we do is we go straight onto the offensive. We like some of his content, we tag him in something else, we send him something, we comment on his articles, we become, just like a friend would, persistently professional in there, sharing content and saying, hey, Gary, you know what? Just because I've asked and you've said no, doesn't mean I'm going to go away. That's it. And so you can see we just keep jabbing, and then we get to our second ask. So my second ask would typically be something softer. So it might be an invitation to a webinar, much like this, that sort of thing. So you've got to have a mixture of engagement strategies, value adds, and solid asks. Okay. And like I said, it doesn't, your time frame, 2 months, 1 month, 2 weeks, like depends on what you sell and what your target market is. So, and how much they're going to be interacting with you. So it might be longer, might be shorter. That's completely up for you. Sit down with your sales enablement team, or if you're a small term, sit down by yourself and map that stuff out. What do you need to use? So this is what I've broken up as some great, what I like to use for engagement and value asks. So engagement is obviously with the really simple stuff. Likes, comments, shares. So you reshare their articles, which is really cool because they like that. Tag or mentioning them inside posts, dime a dozen, probably not as good as it used to be. St. Toy, saw this, thought of you. My favorite line, that you don't even need to do anything more than that. Tag somebody in an article. Hey, Gary, saw this, thought of you. Tag them, then send them a message behind the scenes. Hey, Gary, I tagged you in that article. Remember when we're talking about objection handling and about COVID and how people are getting it wrong? This article is a good one about where they're getting it right. Have a look at that. Because what you're doing is you're tagging them on the platform. They get to see that in a public space, and then you're starting a conversation further down the line. It's really like behind the scenes in messaging format. And if you've got their email, you can try sending them out an email. Hey, look, tag you on LinkedIn. Thought you might want to have a check that out. Polls, new tool. I like it. You can create a poll over a 2 or 3 week, 1 week time frame. Ask something that's smart from an industry perspective. So, in the sales space, you might say, create a poll that says, are your team working from home? Are they in lockdown? Are they prospecting effectively? Yep. Create a poll, and then every sales director or sales manager that I connect with, I say, hey, Gary, I'm running a poll on LinkedIn. I've tagged you in the comments. Jump in there and vote. I'd really love to have your point of view across there. So all he has to do, it's really easy for him to do, go across there and vote. And here's the thing, right? The quicker you engage with people on that front, so the sooner you engage with people, LinkedIn do you a favor, and they give you and their content priority into each other's feed for about 7 days. So the sooner you connect and interact, you're going to be, anything you do, they will see, and vice versa. So it's a really good, so when you connect with somebody, start that interaction straight away. And the other thing is, that's the best time to start a conversation. Right at the very start, people are fresh in the relationship. It's going to be hard for you to go back to somebody, excuse me, who you were connected with last year and say, hey, I see we've been connected for 15 months and we haven't swapped a single message. But by the way, you know, I really like what you did with your hair or whatever, right? James Michael's got a great strategy about engaging people off the bat with video. Love it. I won't share too much of that, but, you know, create a short video and send that out. Good stuff. Nice engagement strategies. What can you do to create value? Introductions. Hey, Mark, I think you're going to get some real value from this guy. He's in the same space. You guys should hook up. I saw you mentioned that you were struggling with some software. Do you know about this guy? You guys should hook up together. They're easy to do. And if you have a look at most people's posts, there's an opportunity for you to tie people together. That's a really good value add that costs you nothing. Of course, specific articles, endorsements, you can do that. Some people like them. I mean, I personally like getting endorsements, so feel free to go in there, endorse the daylights out of me, happy to accept them. Recommendations, likewise. Not many people are going to turn down a good quality recommendation if you can do it genuinely. Things like infographics, white papers, reports, we've all know about those. They can be seen as valuable as long as they're not pushing your wheelbarrow. And of course, the asks, you know, the big ones, meetings, web, and calls, maybe product demonstrations. But easy ones, virtual events, webinars just like this. It actually doesn't matter if you've got 3 people on your webinar. It's all about having something, creating a credible reason to reach out to your clients and say, hey, you know, this might be something that you're interested in. Let's jump on board. You know, maybe you want to come to this webinar as we talk about great ways to be more effective in whatever it is that their business problem might be. They don't know that there's only 3 people on the webinar, but you can use that webinar that you book in 2 weeks' time to reach out to 140 people and start a conversation. It's a great, credible reason. And then you can say, you know what, I'll send you the link afterwards if you can't come. Gives you another reason to interact. So you need to be an absolute specialist at creating valuable, credible reasons for your clients to start great conversations. It's exactly the same as offline, but just lots of people get this wrong and think for some reason, because you can't interact face to face or in real time, it's over social media, that they can treat you like shit. That's not the case at all. Now, I mapped this out because what happens is lots of people get confused about the 3 and they start simply engaging on people's content. Okay, and they start building out a social cadence that's full of engagement, it doesn't have any asks and has very little value. So you need to be really clear about these 3 buckets when you build them out. This is how I build them out inside Sales Navigator. So you'll see I've got A1, so I have a campaign, and I'm showing you this just so you can see how I manage my prospects. And again, I'm not going to show you how to do this. You should know how to do this already, and if you don't, go to YouTube. So you build tags so that you can see where people are up to, because most people are going to lose, once they start getting into the cadence here, you're going to forget where people are. If I create tags for each one of these parts of the cadence inside my CRM, which is Pipedrive and Sales Navigator, it's going to be significantly easier for me to see where I'm at. So that's why I share this with you. This is a great play. And if you aren't using Sales Navigator like this, you really should be, because you can then go and search on those tags. So I can go and search on A2, find out all the people that I'm up to that I haven't connected with, but are prospects. Then I can go and do a little bit of engagement and then create a customized, personalized connection request and move them into the A3 bucket. When they accept the connection request, I then stick them into the A3, piece of cake. Okay. So this is what mine looks like. So you can see there, it's not very prescriptive. And because I'm a self-starter or self-managed, it's easy to do. So this is how it looks, right? Engage, value, connect, and value. And it's up to me to prescribe what value and what each engagement strategy will be. I'm pretty confident in my skills. If you're leading a sales team or you're a sales enablement professional, you may not want to leave this up to your team, because they will have the opportunity to lean too heavily on the engagement and not heavy enough on the value and the ask function. Particularly when lots of CRMs and some of the businesses I've worked with make the mistake of having inside their CRM social activity. So they have a drop-down box in their cadence. Okay, call Mark on day 1, day 3, send him an email, day 4, social interactivity. Well, what is that? As a rep, I'm going to try and rip through my tasks as quick as possible. I see social interaction. I'm just going to go and like a piece of his content, then tick, yes, I've done that in the CRM, and cancel a task and move on. If that fits you, then you need to move to something a little bit more prescriptive like this. So walking through this for you, so A1, engage. So you map out exactly what each one of these steps is going to be for your sales reps. Okay. So A4, engage, comment, and or tag, right? A5, could be day 19 by now. It's a value interaction. So we're going to find someone to introduce them to, or we're going to go, saw this, thought of you. We're going to have it. So, and the reason why we do this is there's no way they can escape that. They can't not see that we're interacting. So if we like something and they've got 85 likes on a piece of content, there's a high probability that they may not see that you're there. When you're adding value like this, they're going to have to acknowledge that you're interacting with them, right? And that's why the value pieces come just before the asks. What happens if you walk all the way through the cadence and nothing happens? Well, you've got two options, really. You can take them out of your cadence if you think, or what I typically turn to do if they're a very good client is move them back into the cadence at A4. Just after connecting, and just repeat and just keep repeating, because I've always got content. I've always got webinars. I've always got, well, I've now got podcasts, which is fantastic. I've always got, recordings, content. I've got events. I've got all sorts of things. So I just keep asking them to come. And it doesn't matter whether I've got 45, 95 or 155 people on a webinar. It costs me nothing. So, and it would be the same for you. You just keep engaging with them, and sooner or later they're going to say, Mark, I'm not engaging with you anymore, and that's cool. Or they're going to say, you know what, it's about time we went and had a conversation. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to get an idea there of how that maps out. So we've got to flip the script, be interacting with people in a way that they're not expecting. Use the jab, 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 punt, right hook approach of Gary V. Map that across a cadence that suits your individual business and your ICP perfectly. Make sure your team's using enough value, engage, and a good mixture of value, engage, and asks, and not defaulting to just all likes, which is a trap most of us fall in. And then the last piece of the puzzle, of course, is our messaging. As I've said, it absolutely has to hit the nail on the head. It's got to be perfect for the platform, right? For the platform and the medium. So the platform is Twitter or LinkedIn, and the medium is social media. So you've got to forget about your email templates. Marketers, I'm sorry if I'm going to upset you. Anything that the marketing team's given you, don't use it, right? I'm going to show you some examples shortly, but it needs to be short, sharp, and super casual. Like if you think about how most people interact on social, it's on your phone, right? So, you're not using big templated templates. Keep it sweet. The ad spelling mistake, short bit of a shortcut. I like it, but make your own style. Make sure you're entwining persuasion and influence. Bob Hawke said, famously, if you get fired for not going to work, you're a bum. I'm saying if you don't use persuasion and influence, you're a bum. Right? There's 30% gains proven to be used in some instances when you use persuasion more effectively than leaving it out. It will deliberately increase the chances of you getting a yes and decrease the chances of you getting a no. I just want you to think about that sentence and run it through your head. Why would you not use persuasion and understand how behavior science impacts your clients and your prospects and their propensity to say yes or their propensity to say no? Goodness gracious. Combining the two in a really authentic way is where the dream works, right? And it's going to take practice. And you've got to have to measure it. You're going to have to work it out. And it's all about them. My favorite radio station, WII.FM. What's in it for me? Okay. Everyone's tuned into the same damn radio station. I think I stole that from Zig Ziglar. As a matter of fact, it might have been Brian Tracy. It's one of those gurus. So dial into that. Okay, the messaging has to have 3 points or it's going to fail. And remember, I said messaging was one of the 3 areas where it is a critical failure point. So if you don't have your profile, your network, or your messaging dialed, and you try these strategies, you're going to fail. Okay, I'm just going to show you at a high level some messaging. I'm not going to rip into this. We've talked about messaging before. There's a webinar on personalization that we did. There's a lot of my resources out there and blogs that talk about how to use persuasion, message persuasion. I just want to give you a quick overview. So here's one I used. It's actually a bit long for Sean. I used this morning, right? So these aren't my best emails. These are the ones that I've done in the last couple of days. So Sean, I know we've just connected yesterday, however, so I'm just saying, bang, here's a webinar. This is the sort of outreach that you want, no longer than this. Okay, and he's come back straight away. Yeah, Mark, no problem. So now I can go back to him and say, you might have missed it. Here's the link. Like, it's as easy as that, right? If you've got something that looks like it's useful, people are going to engage with you. All right, so, a follow-up message here. This is not Andrew Ronald. I'm just using his profile to use this because I know he's a safe profile. Hi, Andrew. On the right, here's a message I got from an education facility earlier this week, or last week, May the 10th. Hi, Mark. I'm Riley from AIB, the Australian Institute of Business. Well, that's important that I knew that it was a acronym and that I got the entire word out, wasn't it? We're Australia's #1 provider of online MBAs. Well, why do I give a flying? I mean, what does that matter to me? Our school is 100% online and flexible. Cool. Designed for real people as opposed to fake people, because fake people do a lot of MBAs, don't they? Who want to accelerate their careers. How's life treating you over at Social for Sales? Oh, so there you go. That's just a marketing grab, isn't it? So great thanks, or could be better. So I tick great thanks. Outcomes immediately. See that? 11:46, straight away, automated response. Wow, if you're angling from a promotion. So, rubbish. So I clicked, could be better. Guess what happened? Got exactly the same answer. So this is what you're not supposed to do, right? So don't do that. Don't be tempted by automation. Quality over quantity. And you can see here, here's an interaction I had with Path. Now, Path may well be on this webinar. Hey, buddy. This is the message structure and what it looked like. And I just share this just to go, we looked at each other's profile. I went, hey, I noticed we crossed paths here recently, always looking to share content and resources with senior sales guys. So I thought I'd create an easy window for us to connect. That's my connection message, right? I see we've crossed paths, consistency. So you know it, I know it. Okay, I'm always looking to share content with resources. So I'm not saying, I want to join your network. I'm saying I'm going to give you stuff. Okay, with senior sales guys, doesn't matter how senior they are. I always say senior, a little bit of a compliment pump up there. Okay, thought I'd create a window for you to connect. It makes it really easy for them to say yes or no. Okay, he hits back, within 4 minutes. Yeah, sure. What sort of resources have you got? I've gone, bang. Well, actually, I've got a webinar this week and a brand new podcast. Check these out, baby. And I'll tag you in them. Like, that's how relationships should be starting, right? And even if he didn't accept my connection request at the start, he's not going to say, I don't know you. There's no harm in this. There's no, nowhere does this look like spam. This is just me reaching out saying, hey, here's some great stuff. Let's get amongst it. Okay, so in summary, let's wrap it up. Putting it all together, you've got to get the basics right. Get those 3 wrong, you're going to fail. Outreach is our responsibility as professional salespeople to absolutely nail it. But in order for us to do that effectively, we've got to flip the script, do the opposite of what everyone is doing, and hit people when they're not ready for it, right? The bar is so low. For us to be experts, it's going to be an absolute simple hurdle for us to do that. We're going to look like superstars. We're going to be the top 2% of our industry in no time at all. Not social distancing, social cadence. Build a social cadence that suits you and works, and a system of record or accountability, whether that be Sales Navigator like I do, and then or inside your CRM, which I also do via Pipedrive. I love Pipedrive, but it'll work in just about any of those, and you build that cadence into your pipeline so that people know exactly when they're going to do it. Work on your messaging, get it super tight. Guiding principles, I'm not going to work through these. These is what I think are some of the things you should be taking to your social media platform, your social media approach. Create relationships, try and move off channels onto other channels as fast as you can. Keep your profiles up to date and keep changing. Keep learning the intricacies of LinkedIn and the other profiles because they change regularly. Figure out how they work. Be calm and patient. I'm not very calm, but I can be patient. Okay, measure and adjust. All these are great things, and I really think these are the guiding principles for us to be successful and authentic, and ethical online. You follow these, you can't go wrong. My plug, big thanks. Jump onto the podcast. Subscribe, listen to that every Monday. The book's coming out, so I'm going to say a big thank you. I've got an online and on-demand course that I'm going to offer to you guys and girls at a super low rate. It's completely online. I can give it to you cheaply because it needs no further interaction other than I've set it up. It's normally $97 with 8 hours of content. It covers all that you need to get set up to this stage. Coupled with this webinar, you will be rocking it if you do everything in that course that I tell you to do. I'm going to give it to you for just $57, but you need to email me to get it you just set up. I appreciate you letting me give you that little pitch. You know, it's a great LMS. It's a fantastic tool called cadence.coach, and you can just learn at your own time on demand. It's super awesome. Thanks for tuning in. I'm now going to run through the messages and answer as many as I can if they make sense.